Judy was boring.
Hello.
Then Judy discovered ChumbaCasino.com.
It's my little escape.
Now Judy's the life of the party.
Oh, baby, mama's bringing home the bacon.
Whoa, take it easy, Judy. The Chumba life is for everybody. So go to ChumbaCasino.com and play over 100 casino-style games. Join today and play for free for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. ChumbaCasino.com. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
Hey, what's happening, everybody? I'm Larry Roberts.
And I'm Sara Lohse, and this is Branded, your comprehensive guide to creative branding.
And on this episode of the podcast, we have an amazing guest with us today. Christina Barsi is the CEO and founder of, and see, I'm not, is it French? Avant House.
We don't trust Larry for any pronunciations ever since the serif debacle. But
it is. It's sans serif. That's the font. It's sans serif. It means no footies on the
serif,
font.
But yes, means. Avant House Media is Barsi's brand, and she is a creator with purpose. She helps brands build their companies through branded podcasts, which is something that we do as well. So we're really excited to get her take on some of the same topics and talk about how we can use these branded podcasts to grow our brands and grow our businesses. So thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. Hi, everyone. Hi, listeners.
So, Christina, we're going to start the podcast off a way that we love to start every podcast that we have a guest on. And we'd like for you to just take a moment and tell us a little something about yourself.
Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it.
Okay.
We just recorded a whole episode on how much we hate when hosts start with "tell us about yourself."
It's such an open-ended question, first of all.
It is. Do you agree that it's terrible?
That? I agree that it's terrible in that it gives me no direction.
Yep.
Sorry, Larry.
Oh, no, exactly. That's the whole point of our episode that we did about it, especially when it came to guesting on podcasts, because it doesn't. It gives you no direction. It gives the audience no context. It shows that we were fairly irresponsible as hosts, and we didn't do our own homework in preparation for you to join us. So
I did homework. I introduced you, and I think I nailed it.
I think you did a good job. And you also both know me. So
yeah, that helps. That helps. That
doesn't
helps.
hurt.
So you could ask a more tailored question, but you know, it's the morning, so I understand. It's fine. I can create my own question because I do this shit all day long for a living.
We will definitely ask a more tailored question, starting with why is podcasting the media that you focus on for building brands?
Oh man, okay. This is an interesting question. Based on our conversation we just had about tell me about yourself, because it's hard to answer that without telling you about myself and about my life and how I ended up doing podcasting.
We want to hear about you. We just hate the question.
Yes, I understand. So, so here's the abridged version. I was an actor before, and I was not, I was hitting some walls in terms of, speaking of business, speaking of brand, I wasn't feeling seen in the way that the industry was branding me. So I very much was like, nope, I don't think I can do this because it's not feeling authentic. And this was back in like 2012. And so I thought, well, what can I do? And podcasting was happening, but people didn't really know about it, including me at that time. And so I just started writing, and, web series were becoming popular. And I was like, maybe I'll do that. I don't know how, but something. I need more control of my creative life and my own brand, which I didn't have developed either at that time. So I discovered podcasting because someone presented an opportunity to me to do that, and fell in love with it, and discovered myself and my own brand and my own creative passion. And that all of this freedom came from that medium, that I saw the application for it in anything and everything that anyone might ever want to create, because it's so accessible. And for the most part, it depends on, if you actually have digital access. But if you do, for most people, for a lot of people, I should say, it's one of the easiest mediums to jump into. And that's how it all started for me. That it really comes back to that inspiration of being able to be really creative with how you want to tell your brand story, how you want to tell your, fictional story, whatever it happens to be. It's such an amazing story medium. And if we're circling back to just, businesses and brands themselves, it's become a very useful tool that now has all of these ways that people have come up with how to leverage it, where I felt like I was trying to explain this to people, years ago, like, this is what you can do with it. And now it's like everyone kind of knows, and it's a lot simpler of a conversation, usually with a client or someone who's coming on wanting to test it out. And we can kind of have a starting place with that. And it's more about goals and alignment at that point for the way I would work with someone. But yeah, there's so much freedom in it. I think we forget that sometimes. So I bring that back because when I do speak, a lot of the questions are around those rules. Like, what do I do? Yes or no to this? How long should it be? What are the rules? And I'm like, who cares? Fuck the rules, man. Like, just do what
Christina,
makes
we
the
have
most
a rule
sense.
here. We can't say the F word. We don't cut. That's a no,
Already broke that rule. I should
There
have asked.
are no rules.
But there are no rules. And so I am always trying to push that a little bit with people who are trying to, create something new.
Love that.
No, I love that. And I actually miss that because when I started podcasting back in 2014, my first show was a comedy podcast, and it literally had no rules. We went all over the spectrum with this comedy podcast. And actually, it ended up doing extremely well. I mean, we took it to a live stage show. It became an open mic here in Dallas, and it was just an amazing experience. But we literally had no rules. So much so that our very first episode, me and my co-host Jamie, we listened back to it and we went, dude, we can't put this out there. There was no way we could put that out for public consumption. So we ended up not doing it, but we still went at it with a fairly no rules approach. And it was so much fun. And we found so much success in that podcast. Now, fast forward nearly 10 years later, and because I'm so engrossed in the community and in the industry, I find myself working within some confines. I do try to follow set rules and set links of episodes and set, my microphone has to do this, my camera has to be that, and I have to speak this way, and I can't make that mistake, and we have to edit. It's crazy. Right. And it removes so much of the creative process. And it actually removes a lot of the fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's a great point. And to say, I'm listening to you, and we have all those guidelines too, right? Like, meaning we at Avant House Media. But what I try to do when I'm working with some is layer those in over time so that they, I kind of want them to have that freedom of expression and not worry about the rules. Like, let me worry about the rules when they become necessary to bring in. And that's so much harder to do when we're by ourselves because we don't have anyone holding that space for us. And that's true of any creative process. It's either you're open to having no rules and just kind of, experimenting, and that's what you're doing, or you're trying to, fit something into a medium that has a lot of guidelines and you're like, okay, I need to do this right because fill in all the blanks that we think we need to be right all the time.
It's interesting though, because who is even setting these rules? Like, I hear Larry talk about, oh, I have to do this, oh, I have to do that. And I'm just like, why? Says who?
But that's good that there's someone like you asking why.
Yeah, and it's also good that he all kind of came up with some of these rules because they help me to stay a little more on track. I know what we're talking about. You're like, you're not right here.
I didn't make these up. These aren't rules that I go, you know what?
These are Larry's rules.
Yeah.
I feel like some of them, I've never heard them from anyone but you.
So what are they?
Okay,
what are the Larry rules?
What is a Larry rule? I need to hear this now.
Okay, so you spent hundreds of dollars on a camera so that it would look like you're just sitting in front of someone and not behind a screen. And I'm not doing that. I spent $100 on a webcam because you told me I had to buy something. And is your audio your visual fantastic? Yes. But do I care enough to duplicate it? No. Like you
Is
have
that
these
a Larry rule or a Larry preference?
That's a Larry preference. That's not even a rule because we still have the podcast. We still record every week. We still release episodes. And in all honesty, you did take it and upped your game a bit because you have that amazing wall behind you that you painted, that you were inspired on your own. So you're trying to blame me for looking good. And I get so tired of carrying this show for being the best looking one on screen.
Yeah.
This is so hard.
He's the
It's hard to
beauty,
look
I'm the
good, Larry.
brains.
It's hard to
So
carry
good.
that weight on your shoulders. I
It
know.
is. It is. I'm telling you.
I'll send you
Especially,
some Advil.
thank you. So,
Oh.
anyways,
Since you two seem to agree that there are rules, what are they?
I call them guidelines because
Okay.
they're meant to be considered rather than followed.
Fair. I like that.
And I say that because there's infinite ways to create anything. And so if you have a guidebook for this over here, it's not always going to, not every item on that in that guidebook is going to be applicable to someone else. The way I approach every client in my roster is different. For example, Larry, you were bringing up, these people that are doing really well in podcasting and they kind of have this set way of sounding. Number one, as soon as that starts happening, that is a number one red flag to start breaking the pattern because you're going to blend in, right?
mhm.
So if you are noticing that, I immediately go, okay, like what can I take that's working and make it unique, right? So that's kind of how I think is an intentional way to work within things that you see that are working for other people, and then coming back to like, what is it working for you, and who are you, and what is your why, and what is all of that? Because, and I know you guys do that as well because it's the core of everything. Coming back to like, what are we doing this for? And what am I bringing to the table that is different than, whoever we're listening to that's doing well? We don't know their entire process. We don't know their whole story. We don't know how they got to that format. That's the other reason why, starting to compare in those ways, I think is a little, dare I say, dangerous, because it can sink your show. It can sink your inspiration. It can throw you into major imposter syndrome. It can make you think you're unsuccessful when you are. And I've seen that happen with clients too, where they're like, we're not doing well. And, these are what we're comparing ourselves to. And it's like apples to oranges. It's like, why are you comparing yourself to that show
That
or
is
these
Larry's
shows?
favorite saying.
It's
Comparing?
No, apples to oranges.
Oh, apples.
okay.
Because I'm sitting here thinking paranoia, but yeah, we actually have an episode where I went off on a tangent about apples to oranges. So
it's an annoying phrase. Yeah, I know. So it's Ferraris to Toyotas, I guess.
oh, there you go. Okay, yeah, fine. That's cool.
But yeah, so I think that I mean, it's hard to say what those rules are, but a lot of the questions I ask that are asked of me, what are the rules when people are trying to figure that out, is usually how long should my show be? That's a big one that's always asked, even if we're not talking about anything related to that. Someone will ask that. The downloads, right? Like what do I need to make money? That's always a big one. Like, what are the guidelines? What are the rules so I can get to that outcome? Which to me, again, is like an interesting question because we're losing track of why we're doing this once again if we're focused on that too much. But of course, we need to make money. That's part of life. So I understand that that's important to people. But unfortunately, podcasting is not designed to be a cash flow machine. It's meant to complement other efforts you're already making in that area. And then it can become and grow into something that complements that better, is probably the best way to say that. Yeah.
So if podcasting itself doesn't make people money, which is totally news for us, we thought we were rich. How?
That's good. Then if you feel rich, great.
Something like that. If podcasting is not meant to make you money, how can it be used for businesses? Like, how can it be used to affect like the bottom line of your business?
Practical reasons why it works well for a business. You get to really dig in deep to that purpose and why that I was just sharing about. So it's an opportunity to take everything that you are actionably doing in your business and then spend time discussing, the intentions behind those things. That's one version, right? Of doing that, or really digging in, like on this show where it's like, here's what the things are. Let's talk about why they're important. That's another thing. It's like if you're filling in the blanks and you're finding space for having a conversation with the people that you would like to know you. And I say it that way because it's who knows you, right? It's us trying to be in front of the world in a way that they're starting to understand who we are as businesses, as humans, and it brings in that human quality. Marketing has also changed quite a bit, right? It's not this hard sell anymore. No one's really responsive to that any longer. So podcasting is a really lovely content marketing strategy if you want to think of it that way, as just a marketing strategy. It's something that really warms up everyone to you and your brand and your intentions and your purpose, and people fall in love with that. And when that's where the engagement becomes really high, which is also why podcasting is a nice medium versus when you are watching YouTube. Even, I know it's a popular platform and it's a useful one and can also be paired with podcasting, right? Video. But there's something different that occurs when we interact with something on video that feels more distant as an interaction versus someone who's listening to an intimate conversation that's happening inside your earbuds or while you're living your life. Something about the spatial relationship that happens in your life as a listener when you're spending time with these podcast hosts and guests that transforms the way you feel about them. So there's some like brain science and subconscious stuff going on that is actually really interesting, and I think is the real sort of buy-in. It's how podcasts make us feel that gives us an edge on some of the other marketing strategies out there as well. So I love that about it. The people that listen to my show are like diehards, right? Like if I ever run into them, they're like, oh my God, you're just like you are in person and it's amazing. And I tell everyone about your show. And it's the one that I like, whatever people say that, are the hardcore listeners, but that's true across all podcasts that stick with it and really, really lean into their intentionalities. And here's the other reason why I don't think people talk about enough. Podcasting helps your business become a better business because you're spending so much time figuring out what those intentions are and what those purposes are behind the things that you're doing, and you're becoming more and more authentic. You're peeling away your layers over time as a human being and as a business leader, that you're going to show up in your business totally different even just a couple years in if you're doing that kind of work inside your show. And it really kind of elevates your ability to show up as a better leader as well. And that's something I'm noticing that is really lovely to see in my clients, in myself as well. And it's very much a self-development process too, that I don't think we talk about very much.
It's kind of cool that you point that out, because as I'm sitting here and you're telling us your backstory and your approach to podcasting, it leads me to look at my experience over the last several years and how I've developed in a variety of different ways as a podcaster, as an entrepreneur, as a speaker. And podcasting has
Right.
touched my life in every one of these arenas. And I've been doing it almost 10 years. So it takes time for that to evolve and for you to really start seeing a significant return on influence from your podcast. You mentioned everybody's wanting to make money from their podcast, and other than branded, it's just typically podcasts aren't money generating experiences. But over time, you get that return on the influence itself, and that influence is what in turn starts generating that money that you're looking for. But
Mhm.
it's such a journey. And even as you were sitting there talking, I'm sitting here going, let's evaluate the way Sara and I are doing branded.
Mm.
We come on here and the conversations we have on branded, what are we, 14, 15 episodes in?
Something like that.
They're much more structured than a conversation that you're going to hear when we're hanging out at a conference or we're working together on a project or whatever it may be. And you have me sitting here going, maybe we should pull back some of these layers. Maybe we should get rid of some of these Larry rules and just, yeah, because, yeah, I'm feeling attacked. But no, not really. But maybe we should peel these back and start having the conversations like we have in real life, but at the same time, adding in those value components that we bring into each and every episode as well. So I think that's interesting because we sit here and there's definitely times, a lot of times, when we hit that record button and we just can't make it happen. It's just she's off point, I'm off point. We're clashing. We there's just, it's not a conversation. It's a structured exchange of words, and many times that structure's just not there. We have to go, all right, well, we just ruined that episode. Let's try again tomorrow.
That's so interesting.
I just wonder if we peeled that back and really tapped into our authentic conversations and presented those as our podcast, if we as creators wouldn't have an easier time, and potentially audiences would get more insight, because when they see us, we even talk about, we have our conference personas.
Yeah.
So maybe we could have our real personas more so on the podcast, and then we could actually have our real personas at the conferences too. So it's kind of interesting to hear you talking that way, and it's really kind of ringing home for me.
Yeah. And thank you for sharing all of that, because just that in itself helps. The transparency helps that you're already, that in itself is doing that, right? It's like letting down the veil for a moment to talk about the reality that we all put on these personas when we step into certain arenas. And we all do that, and we'll probably continue to do it forever, and to some degree.
Sure.
The goal is to just make the veil thinner, I suppose, and to try to show up more consistently throughout in spaces where it makes sense to do so. And I will say that, like, what comes with that is always letting go of the people pleasing part and wanting to be, we all want to be seen and heard and loved. And that becomes tested when we start to reveal more of our true selves, and when we show up messy, right? Or when we show up in the moment that we're actually experiencing, and all of that. And so it's an interesting, I've been experimenting with that myself, which is part of my job, I suppose, because I have to help other people to step into that. So if I'm not stepping into that, like, I can constantly having to question myself, like, what more can I let go of in terms of my own layer? And am I going to be okay with that? And it's these little increments. And sometimes I am worried about it and going, oh, that may have rubbed someone the wrong way, but sorry, like, this is what's happening. So,
I love that you say that you do it because it's your job. So you kind of have to, like, that's my whole experience with, like, podcasting and podcast guesting. I was always in the back. I was, like, coordinating opportunities and all of this stuff. So when I launched my company to help people guest on podcasts, that's when I realized, like, I need to actually start guesting on podcasts, but I also hated doing it. I was not comfortable behind a mic. I was not comfortable on camera. And I'm like, I know what I'm talking about, but, like, can you just do as I say, not as I do? Because I don't want to do it. So I ended up forcing myself to start podcast guesting because that's what I'm talking to people about doing. I have to do it. And thankfully, doing it for a while, I started to like it. And now I host the podcast and I love what I do. But it took a while. And it took a while of just showing up because I have to and because it's my job before I got to the point where I like doing this.
That's a wonderful point. Yeah. And it's all a process. I mean, that's a process too. And it's figuring out if the first steps are, intentional and worth it. And if the next step is intentional and worth it. And then we keep walking forward. And eventually you're a few steps ahead than you were yesterday. And and you grow into it. So I didn't know that. So that's a fun fact that I didn't know about you, Sarah. Yeah.
What would you tell somebody, because you talked a lot about authenticity and your whole kind of slogan is creating with purpose. What would you tell a client or a prospective client who wants to get into podcasting, but isn't sure or isn't comfortable really being authentic in that media?
So I'm also a creativity coach, and you end up getting a lot of exercises from me. If I think you can potentially do it. If you're just not ready, then we're not going to work together. Like, it's better for you to keep figuring out what you need to do next, and we're probably not the best fit. So that's the truth of it. I usually do a little call to see if someone is open with me on the phone and can talk to me from a place that has the components that I know I can work with through that beginning stage, so that beginning stage isn't our whole process, because that can get really long and that's not what they're paying for. That's not really what they're showing up for. And that's happened before where we've had to move on, or I may suggest just consulting rather than starting the show, so that we can spend a lot of time getting through their fears. And I've done that before with some clients that end up launching something different sometimes, and they make a lot of realizations during that. So it's really having that emotional intelligence of knowing where someone is truly at and what tool they need. Do they need more time? And are they really stuck in their fear and not wanting to talk about the thing that they really want to talk about? That happens all the time. They're like, I want a podcast. And they tell me this whole story about their life. And then their podcast is not about that. I'm like, what? Wait a minute. Wait a second. You want to talk about your cats on your show, but you had this whole experience with this trauma that you feel needs to be expressed, but you don't want to talk about that at all. Okay. Wait a minute.
At what point do you turn into a therapist?
Oh, pretty early on. Yes. So there is a fine line sometimes between coaching and feeling like a therapist. And, I tend to attract people that need a safe space. So there's something to say for that just happens. And that grows over time too, learning, who shows up and what kind of boundaries I need and things like that too. So that is part of my process as well. And probably every human's process as we build relationships. So yeah, there is an aspect of that. But I mean, how I work with people is probably pretty unique because of the coaching that gets layered in that they may or may not, sign up for, but it helps. And I understand the creative process really well. And truly that's what you're engaging in. And that's what brings up a lot of fear for people. And that's what needs a little more understanding how that process works, and that is a long-term strategy that will have these parts of the feelings, right? Like, really scary at first, you have to just do it anyway, and then getting to the next stage and then feeling really good, and then you're going to hit another hurdle because you're growing again. And it's all of these things. It's very much like a business. Business is like a creative process too. Circling back to like why they pair really well together. It's almost the same in so many ways in how you build each one. So that's always interesting too. But yeah, I don't know if I answered your question well, but it's really about figuring out where they're at, and sometimes they're not ready.
Yeah. What would be the ideal? I know we're getting towards the end of the episode, but I want you to just like really quick, what is the ideal podcaster? Who is, when it comes to podcasting for a business or podcasting to grow your brand, what would you say are either like the personality or the traits or like the attitudes of someone who would just really make the ideal branded podcaster?
Wow. Great question, because I'm not into ideals. So I'm going to like break the box again here. So that comes back to the individual once again. It's, do you have a clarity? It's really, do you have enough clarity that we can get clearer through the process that you signed up for, the timeline that we have together, right? And is there room for us to do that? Or are you not based in reality right now, which is unfortunately like not uncommon, where we think that we're ready and we're not, and we think we're going to hit our goals in the first month, and that's unrealistic. And so spending a lot of time, making sure we can get to the reality quickly of what this really is, what this process looks like, having clarity around what we need to do next, and someone who's flexible and open to have that creative exchange where they can go deep with me, maybe more than they would on their show, so that I can take that and go, all right, now I know how to serve you so that you create a show that's unique to your goals, your needs, your success, your business, your next first step, and your overall big arcing step that you're hoping to achieve when we do this for a few years. And someone who's in it for the long game. That's truly what is required. And I don't know if that's necessarily ideal in terms of like, is this the idyllic, perfect person? But, it's packaged in many different ways, but it really is just, can you show up with a excited, open, inspired mind that's willing to really lean into who you are and your honesty with honesty and earnestness. Is that a word?
It is now.
It is now. And and just willing to go on the journey, because it is a journey, like you said, Larry.
Yeah. And I've gotten a lot out of this episode, and I'm actually going to have to digest this thing for a little bit, because I don't know, Sarah, you and I are going to have a meeting after this, because I'm
Christina,
thinking
you got me in trouble.
No,
Oh, no.
no, it's not in trouble at all. It's just maybe we need to look at this thing a little bit differently. So hopefully some others that are listening right now, if you already have a podcast or you have a business or a brand, hopefully this episode is helping you look at things a little bit differently as well. Maybe looking at it from more of a creative perspective versus a structured, this is the way it's done perspective. It's going to be interesting to see what the fallout is from this. If there is any, there may not be any. Maybe I'm going to go eat lunch here in a minute and I'll go, that was just all silly. I don't know. But we'll
Need a Snickers.
yeah, maybe I need a Snickers. So, but before we wrap this thing up, Christina, I'm definitely going to be giving us some thought. Tell our listeners where people can find out more about you and reach out if they have any questions.
Of course. Thank you, Larry. So of course, my complicated name that no one can pronounce is my website. So avanthousemedia.com. I know. Well, there it is. I can't change it now.
We'll link it in the show notes. Don't worry.
Perfect. And same thing. If you feel like you'd like to email me, I'm open to that. My last name, Barsi, at avanthousemedia.com. I'm on LinkedIn under my name and or my company name. I have 2 pages there. And then Instagram is the Barsi. And that's everything, I think.
Cool deal. Well, hey, everybody, if you are already a subscriber to this amazing show, we want to say thank you very much for tuning in each and every week. And if you're not, for whatever strange reason, do us a favor right now. Smash that subscribe button on your favorite podcast platform so we can continue to bring you these episodes each and every week. Christina, thank you so much for joining us this week. And with that, I am Larry Roberts.
I'm Sara Lohse. I'll talk to you next week.
Hey guys, it is Ryan. I'm not sure if you know this about me, but I'm a bit of a fun fanatic when I can. I like to work, but I like fun too. It's a thing. And now the truth is out there. I can tell you about my favorite place to have fun. Chumba Casino. They have hundreds of social casino style games to choose from with new games released each week. You can play for free anytime, anywhere. And each day brings a new chance to collect daily bonuses. So join me in the fun. Sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.